We are taking the position that this is not an accident. It's not an accident when you pick up a gun as a trained law enforcement officer, point that gun and pull the trigger. As a result of Mr. Porter's actions and the negligence of a number of parties, the family behind me is being forced to lay their loved one to rest tomorrow.
He was able to carry a loaded weapon into a government building, killing a mother and an officer of the law, and he was home within a few hours. That we believe that this was no accident and 100% preventable.
Family, friends, and loved ones pause to remember a special police officer killed during a training exercise last week. Maurica Manyan was shot in the chest by a retired D.C. officer at the Anacostia Neighborhood Library. She was a mother and just 25 years old. Glad you're with us tonight. I'm Adam Longo. Manyan's family tells our Rafael Sanchez Cruz they have questions about the retired officer's actions.
She was my best friend. She was like my twin. We were like inseparable.
Maurica Manyan's family says they cannot process the death of the 25-year-old library police officer that was shot Thursday afternoon following a training session inside the Anacostia Library in Southeast D.C.
We will remember Maurica by having this candlelit vigil. Her favorite colors are red and white.
Loved ones gathered around a makeshift altar at Beltsville North Park in Maryland. Maurica's brother saying he's heartbroken for his 4-year-old nephew.
I looked up to her. I can't describe how much I miss my sister.
No old man for retire.
But there's also anger from the Manyan family. Maurica's father questions the actions of the retired D.C. police lieutenant that, according to court documents, shot his daughter in the chest. 58-year-old Jesse Porter has been charged with 1 count of involuntary manslaughter and 1 count of negligence while holding a loaded firearm. Charging documents saying that the victim paused to take off her mask and adjust her hair for a picture when Porter pulled the gun from his holster, pointed it at her, and the shot was fired. Witnesses saying Porter, who was hired by the library system for baton training, may have mistaken his real weapon for a dummy training gun. Manyan's family saying that the retired police officer should be held to a higher standard and that he should not have been released.
Just what was his purpose of even pulling the gun out in a training? It didn't matter if they had dummy guns, like there was no threat, there was no need for a weapon. So why have a weapon and why pull the trigger?
Long live Maurica! Long live Maurica!
Porter's preliminary hearing is scheduled for August 24th. Maurica's family told me tonight that without a doubt they will be in that courtroom to face the man that killed the 25-year-old.
Well, as we speak, sentencing is underway for the retired D.C. police lieutenant who was working as an instructor when he shot and killed a special police officer towards the end of a training session at the Anacostia Library. Now, this incident happened a year ago with family members just as heartbroken and outraged today. Let's get to Fox 5's Stephanie Ramirez with the very latest on this case. Steph?
And Sharon, we were listening to very emotional impact statements from the family members still going on upstairs. But I can tell you, I did listen to a cousin who said he had never seen 2 people deteriorate more or as quickly as the victim's parents. The cousin telling the judge that that's what happens when you take the soul and the heartbeat of a family away. He said, you destroy that family. Very emotional again going on upstairs. This is a family of 25-year-old Maurica Manyan here, the special police officer who was killed. The family not only furious today that a plea deal was granted, but they also are calling on different city agencies to address what the family says are several policy violations that happened with this shooting. Before court, first on Fox 5, we spoke with the victim's brother. Here's what he had to say.
The plea deal should have never been on the table. We know who did it. There was no justification, like I said, on why. He should have been sentenced a year ago. And for this process to be drawn out, it is unreasonable. Who do we have to blame for this? They obviously don't want to blame him. So do we blame DC for hiring him? He didn't have insurance on his company. All his certifications obviously go unstanded, but there shouldn't be any reason for us to be here today.
That was Radcliffe Manyan there. He held the victim's son, 5-year-old son, in his arms as he spoke to the judge today. Jesse Porter is the retired D.C. police lieutenant who was working August 4th, 2022 as an instructor when he shot and killed 25-year-old special police officer Maurica Manyan. Court documents describe baton training that day. And toward the end, the group was taking a class picture when the victim apparently said that she wasn't ready, wanting to remove her face mask. Witnesses said Porter was allegedly joking when he said something to the effect of, "Here we go again." Court documents say earlier that day, witnesses also saw Porter pull out a different color training gun and make pretend that he was shooting the 25-year-old with people around him laughing. The instructor claimed to allegedly thought that he was doing the same then, but actually had pulled out a live and loaded gun in that fatal shooting. Guys, now Porter, he was indicted on 3 counts of second-degree murder while armed, among other charges. But with that plea deal involved, it was pled down to involuntary manslaughter while armed and unlawful discharge of a firearm. Sentencing again happening in just moments. Shirin?
Steph, a couple questions for you. I want to know about this police officer who is being tried here. Did he know that was a loaded gun? Did he say that he thought that gun was not loaded? And also, we're hearing the family mention surveillance video. Why was that not released before?
I can tell you, looking through court documents, the documents describe him as moving a gun, a firearm, a live firearm, in and out of a bag. So he had it on him, and that is something that they said with his 30-plus years of law enforcement and training experience that should not have been done. A lot of people calling it gross negligence. Now, in terms of this surveillance video, this is something that would normally be entered as evidence if there was a trial, but because of the plea deal, there is no trial today. The family, though, is demanding that that be shared. They're also making serious allegations of what they say they are seeing in that video. So we're hoping we may still be able to get a copy of that today. The family, though, is expected to speak after sentencing. We'll have more updates throughout the show.
Attorneys for the family of the special police officer killed at the Anacostia Library releasing the surveillance video tonight of that shooting.
It is disturbing, and it happened after a training session. A retired D.C. police lieutenant was sentenced for the shooting last month to 3 years, but the victim's family says it is not enough. Sierra Fox reviewed that footage tonight. Sierra, what can you tell us?
It's absolutely heartbreaking. You can see that special officer in agony, suffering, fighting for her life on the ground. Now, I just spoke with the victim family's attorney, who's calling on an investigation into multiple suspected policy violations. Take a listen to one of their concerns.
Why was Mr. Porter permitted to walk about all day with a live weapon in a building that it was prohibited, in a training session where it should have been prohibited? In every police agency that we can think of up and down the East Coast, live weapons are not permitted in a training session, particularly here, where the training, which was over at the time, nevertheless, the training was not about shooting. It wasn't a firearms training.
Now, this surveillance video you see was released by the victim's family attorney tonight, and we want to warn you, it may be difficult to watch. Back on August 4th, 2022, a group just finished baton training happening at the Anacostia Library on Good Hope Road in Southeast D.C. They were gathering together, standing side by side to take pictures. Footage shows 25-year-old Maurica Manyan turning around to remove her mask. That's when 59-year-old Jesse Porter, a former D.C. police lieutenant who was conducting the training as a private contractor, shot and killed her. A single bullet hit her in the chest. We're stopping it there because it's disturbing and graphic. You can see instantly everyone is in shock, going into panic mode, some putting their hands over their mouths. The shooter then walks over to Manyan with his hands on top of his head. According to court documents, earlier in the day, Porter had pulled out and pointed his orange training gun at the victim in a joking manner while people laughed. Last month, Porter was sentenced to 3 years behind bars after pleading guilty to involuntary manslaughter while armed and unlawful discharge of a firearm. We just spoke with his attorney, Brian McDaniel.
It was an accident. Mr. Porter never intended to shoot Ms. Manyan. It was a tragic accident. He believed that he did have a training gun in his hand as opposed to a live firearm, and unfortunately, he pointed it at her and shot the live firearm, causing her death.
Attorney McDaniel continued to tell me that his client, Mr. Porter, is very remorseful for what happened that day. Fox 5 has reached out to Mayor Muriel Bowser for comment about this case and to see if any changes will come about as a result.
He shot and killed a young officer during a police training at a D.C. library. Jesse Porter, a former police officer himself, was recently sentenced to 3 years in jail for killing Maurica Manyan. News 4's Mark Seagraves has reaction from her family, who plans to sue Porter and the district. A warning, some viewers might find this video disturbing.
The surveillance video shows the moment retired D.C. Police Lieutenant Jesse Porter drew his gun from his holster and fired the shot, killing Maurica Manyan during a training session at the Anacostia Library last year. News 4 has frozen the video just before the fatal shot is fired. Manyan's cousin avoided watching the video until last night.
I couldn't sleep last night because that image just kept replaying every time I closed my eyes last night. And that's the reason I didn't want to see it. I just keep seeing it.
Manyan, a 25-year-old single mother, was one of several special police officers employed by the library who was being trained on the use of handcuffs and batons by Porter, who had been hired by the library. Chelsea Lewis is an attorney representing Manyan's family, who plans on suing the district government and Porter.
When I first saw the video, I was in shock.
The group was posing for a picture. After the picture is taken, Porter walks away from the group, then turns back as he pulls his sidearm and fires toward the group, hitting Manyan in the chest. Porter pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 3 years in prison.
36 months is not enough time. It's an insult to the family, and we feel like he definitely got away with murder because of who he is.
The video also shows Porter's frantic reaction after the shooting, grabbing his head and pacing across the room as other officers provided first aid and called for help. Porter also provided aid himself, at one point jumped up with his fists clenched in the air. His attorney said Porter thought he had his training gun in his holster, not his real gun. Lewis plans on filing the civil suit this week.
And we seek to hold this District of Columbia, as well as Mr. Porter and other actors that we believe contributed to the death of Officer Manyan. We intend on holding them responsible.
Manyan had just purchased her first home and was caring for her father as well as her 5-year-old son.
So it's hard to watch him break down at times. A 5-year-old breaking down and saying, I wish my mother could come back to life. I wish my mother was here. I wish that man never killed my mother. It's hard to hear that.